Your soulmate is saying, I need to tell you what happened today. It's very urgent, please open this. Don't skip. Listen carefully. The morning arrived quietly, just as countless mornings had before. The first rays of sunlight slipped gently through the curtains, covering the room with warm shades of gold. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth and blooming flowers. Birds welcomed the sunrise with cheerful songs that echoed through the neighborhood. A nearby bakery opened before dawn, filling the streets with the comforting aroma of fresh bread. Children laughed as they hurried toward school. Neighbors greeted one another with warm smiles. Everything appeared wonderfully ordinary. Nothing suggested that this quiet morning would become one of the most meaningful days of someone's life. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most important turning points often begin in ordinary moments. For many months, someone had carried thoughts they never found the courage to share. Not because those thoughts were dangerous. Not because they wanted to hide the truth. But because they believed waiting for the perfect moment would somehow make every conversation easier. Every day they whispered the same promise. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll explain. Tomorrow I'll apologize. Tomorrow I'll express gratitude. Tomorrow I'll finally say what my heart has been carrying. Yet tomorrow always seemed one day farther away. Slowly they realized something. Sometimes silence becomes heavier than honesty. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful relationships grow stronger when honesty replaces hesitation. That morning they prepared a simple breakfast. A warm cup of tea rested beside the kitchen window. Instead of immediately reaching for their phone, they quietly watched the neighborhood awaken. Across the street, a father patiently helped his young daughter tie her shoes. An elderly neighbor carefully watered colorful flowers. A teenager stopped to help someone whose grocery bag had broken. No applause. No audience. Only ordinary kindness. Watching those simple moments reminded them that love is rarely measured by dramatic gestures. It is usually revealed through everyday acts of patience, generosity, and care. Because your heart needs this right now, because everyday kindness often changes lives more than extraordinary moments. After breakfast they reached for an old notebook resting on a nearby shelf. Its cover had faded through years of faithful use. Inside were handwritten pages filled with dreams, prayers, questions, disappointments, gratitude, and hope. Turning each page felt like visiting earlier versions of themselves. The hopeful version. The frightened version. The impatient version. The version who believed every problem required immediate answers. And the version slowly learning that wisdom often arrives quietly. Because your heart needs this right now, because every season of life teaches something valuable when we remain willing to learn. Opening to a blank page, they rested the pen gently against the paper. For several moments they simply stared at the empty space. Then they slowly wrote. If I had one message to send today. They paused. Another sentence followed. I wouldn't want fear to write it. Reading those words stirred something deep inside. They realized they had spent far too much time allowing fear to decide which conversations happened, and which never did. Because your heart needs this right now, because courage begins the moment fear no longer controls our voice. Later that morning they decided to visit the familiar park where they often went whenever life felt uncertain. Towering oak trees stretched confidently toward the bright blue sky. Gentle breezes danced through their branches. The peaceful lake reflected drifting white clouds like polished glass. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children chased butterflies through blooming gardens. Everything invited them to slow down. They found the same wooden bench overlooking the lake. Instead of searching desperately for answers, they simply watched life unfold. Because your heart needs this right now, because stillness often reveals wisdom that busyness cannot. Nearby, a young boy carefully tried to assemble a small wooden birdhouse with his grandfather. One piece refused to fit. The child sighed. "I keep getting it wrong." His grandfather smiled warmly. "No. You're learning. Every attempt teaches you something." Those simple words quietly echoed inside. Perhaps relationships worked the same way. Perhaps difficult conversations were not signs of failure. Perhaps they were opportunities to build something stronger. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships grow through patience rather than perfection. The morning slowly became afternoon. Walking beside the peaceful lake, they noticed an elderly woman sitting beneath a flowering tree writing in a small journal. Curious, they smiled politely. She smiled back. After a few quiet moments she softly said, "I've learned something after many years." "What is it?" they asked. She gently closed her notebook. "The words we never say often become heavier than the words we finally speak." Those simple words remained in their heart long after they continued walking. Because your heart needs this right now, because carrying unspoken gratitude, apologies, or encouragement often becomes a burden we were never meant to carry forever. Later they wandered into the community flower garden. Rows of roses, lilies, daisies, and lavender bloomed beneath the afternoon sun. An elderly gardener carefully removed tiny weeds growing between healthy flowers. Curious, they asked, "Why remove them while they're still so small?" The gardener smiled kindly. "Because little things grow. So do misunderstandings. So does resentment. So does silence. If we care for the garden every day, it stays healthy." Those words settled deeply into their heart. Relationships are much like gardens. Trust needs attention. Respect needs consistency. Kindness needs intention. Communication needs courage. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships flourish through continual care. The afternoon breeze carried soft violin music through the park. Only a handful of visitors paused to listen. Still, every melody was played with remarkable care. Watching the musician reminded them that meaningful things rarely demand attention. Integrity works quietly. Compassion works quietly. Forgiveness works quietly. Hope grows quietly. Yet together they quietly shape lives. Because your heart needs this right now, because the greatest influences often arrive gently. Returning to the familiar wooden bench, they opened the notebook once again. This time the page filled quickly. Today I understand something important. The urgent message isn't about panic. It isn't about fear. It isn't about predicting tomorrow. It's about remembering that people deserve to know they matter today. Gratitude should not always wait. Forgiveness should not always wait. Kind words should not always wait. Reading those sentences brought quiet tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. Because pretending had become far more exhausting than honesty. Because your heart needs this right now, because truth spoken with compassion often becomes the beginning of freedom. As afternoon slowly became evening, golden sunlight reflected across the peaceful lake. Families packed picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned to their nests. Everything gradually became still. Standing beside the water, they reflected on the title of this story. Your soulmate is saying, I need to tell you what happened today. It's very urgent, please open this. A gentle smile crossed their face. The urgency had never been about a mysterious prediction. It wasn't about hidden signs. It wasn't about supernatural messages. The real urgency was beautifully simple. Life moves quietly. Time keeps moving forward. None of us knows how many opportunities we will have to encourage someone. To apologize. To forgive. To express appreciation. Or simply remind another person that they matter. That realization changed everything. Because your heart needs this right now, because today's sincere words may become tomorrow's most treasured memories. That evening they returned home beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The room felt peaceful. The notebook rested quietly on the table. Opening it one final time before bed, they carefully wrote, Tomorrow I will choose honesty over hesitation. Tomorrow I will express gratitude more freely. Tomorrow I will listen before assuming. Tomorrow I will forgive more quickly. Tomorrow I will continue becoming someone whose words and actions reflect kindness, humility, compassion, and hope. They paused before writing one final reflection. Today I discovered that the most important message was never hidden inside mystery. It was the quiet reminder that life becomes richer when we speak with honesty, love with generosity, listen with compassion, and appreciate the people around us while we still have the opportunity. Those simple choices become the strongest foundation for every meaningful relationship. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, the stars continued shining. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would quietly unfold. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared the words they had been carrying. Because they had learned that the greatest message is not one that predicts the future. It is the one that inspires us to live today with honesty, gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, and hope. The next morning arrived with the same gentle sunrise that had greeted countless mornings before. Golden light slowly stretched across the room, warming the wooden floor beneath the window. A cool breeze carried the scent of rain-soaked earth, fresh flowers, and the promise of another ordinary day. Birds welcomed the dawn with cheerful songs. Outside, the neighborhood slowly came to life. The little bakery opened before sunrise, filling the street with the comforting aroma of warm bread. Children hurried toward school with backpacks bouncing behind them. Neighbors smiled as they watered colorful gardens. Everything appeared exactly the same. Yet inside one heart, everything had quietly changed. Yesterday's decision to stop hiding behind silence had created something unexpected. Not fear. Not regret. Hope. Because your heart needs this right now, because every honest decision plants the seed for a healthier tomorrow. That morning they prepared breakfast slowly. There was no rush. No pressure. Only quiet reflection. A warm cup of tea rested beside the kitchen window while sunlight stretched across the table. Instead of immediately reaching for their phone or becoming distracted by another busy day, they simply watched life unfold outside. A young mother laughed with her son as they walked to school. An elderly neighbor carefully swept leaves from the front path. A delivery driver paused to help someone carry a heavy package. Small moments. Ordinary kindness. Nothing dramatic. Yet those quiet acts reminded them that genuine love is often revealed through simple choices repeated every day. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest relationships are built through consistent acts of kindness. After breakfast they reached once more for the familiar notebook resting on the shelf. Its worn cover carried the marks of many seasons. Inside were dreams written during hopeful mornings. Questions recorded during uncertain nights. Prayers whispered through difficult chapters. Moments of gratitude carefully preserved after ordinary days. Turning each page felt like visiting earlier versions of themselves. The frightened version. The impatient version. The version who believed waiting would solve every problem. And now, the version learning that courage often begins with one honest sentence. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth happens one decision at a time. Opening to a fresh page, they slowly wrote. Today I no longer want fear to decide my conversations. They paused before continuing. If something meaningful needs to be said, I want kindness, not hesitation, to guide my words. Reading those simple sentences brought unexpected peace. Not because every unanswered question had disappeared, but because they finally trusted the direction their heart was taking. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace grows when our actions reflect our deepest values. Later that morning they returned to the familiar park. The towering oak tree still stretched proudly toward the bright blue sky. Gentle breezes moved softly through its branches. The peaceful lake reflected drifting clouds like polished glass. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children laughed while feeding ducks along the shoreline. Everything invited them to slow down. Finding the familiar wooden bench overlooking the water, they quietly sat. For several peaceful minutes. They simply listened. The breeze. The birds. The laughter in the distance. The gentle ripples across the lake. Silence no longer felt empty. It felt comforting. Because your heart needs this right now, because stillness often teaches lessons that noise cannot. Nearby, a grandfather patiently helped his granddaughter assemble a colorful puzzle. Each time she placed a piece in the wrong position, she frowned. "I keep making mistakes." The grandfather smiled warmly. "Mistakes don't mean you're failing. They're helping you understand where each piece belongs." Those simple words echoed deeply. Perhaps relationships worked the same way. Perhaps misunderstandings were not always signs that love had failed. Perhaps they were invitations to understand one another more deeply. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships grow stronger when people choose patience over frustration. As the morning slowly became afternoon, they walked beside the peaceful lake. An elderly woman sat quietly beneath a flowering tree reading a small journal. Curious, they smiled politely. She smiled back. After a few peaceful moments she softly said, "I've spent many years collecting wise thoughts." "What has helped you the most?" they asked. She gently closed the journal. "I learned that honesty spoken with kindness rarely creates the damage we fear." "What causes greater damage?" She looked toward the calm water. "Waiting too long." Those words remained with them long after they continued walking. Because your heart needs this right now, because delayed conversations often become heavier than honest ones. Later they wandered into the community flower garden. Rows of roses, lilies, daisies, lavender, and sunflowers bloomed beneath the warm afternoon sunlight. An elderly gardener carefully watered every flower before removing tiny weeds from the soil. Curious, they asked, "Why care for the garden every single day?" The gardener smiled gently. "Because healthy gardens don't happen by accident. They grow through daily attention." Those simple words settled into their heart. Relationships are gardens too. Trust grows through consistency. Respect grows through honesty. Love grows through patience. Understanding grows through listening. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful relationships flourish through continual care. The afternoon breeze carried soft piano music from a nearby community gathering. Only a handful of visitors paused to listen. Still, every melody was played beautifully. Watching the musician reminded them that beautiful things rarely ask for recognition. Integrity works quietly. Compassion works quietly. Forgiveness works quietly. Hope grows quietly. Yet together they quietly change lives. Because your heart needs this right now, because the greatest influences are often gentle rather than loud. Returning once more to the familiar wooden bench, they opened the notebook again. Today's page filled more quickly than ever before. Today I realized something important. The urgent message was never about panic. It was about courage. The courage to tell someone they matter. The courage to apologize. The courage to forgive. The courage to express gratitude before another ordinary day quietly passes. Reading those words filled them with quiet relief. The burden they had carried for so long no longer felt impossible. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty often brings freedom long before circumstances change. As afternoon slowly became evening, golden sunlight reflected across the peaceful lake. Families packed picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned to their nests. Everything gradually became still. Standing beside the water, they reflected once more on the title of this story. Your soulmate is saying, "I need to tell you what happened today. It's very urgent, please open this." A gentle smile crossed their face. The true urgency had never been about a mysterious warning. It wasn't about predicting tomorrow. It wasn't about supernatural signs. The real urgency was beautifully simple. Life moves forward quietly. Time never pauses. None of us knows how many opportunities we will have to encourage someone, to express appreciation, to repair a misunderstanding, or simply remind another person that they are valued. Because your heart needs this right now, because today's sincere words may become tomorrow's greatest comfort. That evening they returned home beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The room felt peaceful. The notebook rested quietly on the table. Opening it one final time before bed, they carefully wrote, "Tomorrow I will choose courage over hesitation. Tomorrow I will express gratitude more freely. Tomorrow I will listen before making assumptions. Tomorrow I will forgive more generously. Tomorrow I will continue becoming someone whose words reflect honesty, compassion, humility, and hope." They paused before writing one final reflection. "Today I discovered that the most important messages are rarely dramatic. They are the quiet reminders to love generously, listen patiently, forgive sincerely, and appreciate the people around us while we still have the opportunity. Those simple choices become the strongest foundation for every meaningful relationship and every peaceful heart." They gently closed the notebook. Outside, countless stars continued shining. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would quietly appear. New lessons would patiently unfold. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared the words they had been carrying. Because they had learned that the greatest message is never one that predicts the future. It is the one that inspires us to live today with honesty, gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, and hope. And listen to this. Several peaceful mornings had passed since that unforgettable day. The world had not changed overnight. The sun still rose over the quiet streets. Birds still welcomed the dawn with joyful songs. The little bakery at the end of the road still opened before sunrise, filling the air with the comforting aroma of fresh bread. Children still laughed as they hurried toward school. Neighbors still smiled as they watered flowers and greeted one another. Everything appeared exactly the same. Yet inside one heart, everything felt completely different. The fear that once whispered, "Stay quiet a little longer," had begun to lose its power. A different voice had become stronger. A voice that gently said, "If something is true, speak it with kindness. If someone matters, let them know. If gratitude fills your heart, don't keep it hidden. Because your heart needs this right now, because courage grows one honest choice at a time." That morning they prepared breakfast without rushing. Steam slowly rose from a warm cup of tea resting beside the window. Instead of immediately reaching for distractions, they simply watched the sunrise. Golden light stretched across rooftops. Morning dew sparkled on green grass. A gentle breeze moved through the trees, carrying the peaceful sound of birds singing together. For years they had believed happiness would arrive after every uncertainty disappeared. Now they understood something very different. Peace often arrives long before every answer does. Because your heart needs this right now, because inner peace comes from the way we choose to live, not from having complete certainty. After breakfast they reached once again for the familiar notebook. Its cover had become worn after years of faithful use. Every page represented another season of growth. Some pages contained hopeful dreams. Others held difficult questions. Some were filled with prayers whispered during lonely nights. Others celebrated quiet victories no one else had noticed. Turning those pages felt like visiting every version of themselves. The frightened version. The impatient version. The discouraged version. The hopeful version. And now, the version learning that honesty is one of life's greatest gifts. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth often happens so gradually that we only recognize it when we look back. Opening to a fresh page, they slowly wrote. Today I make another promise. They paused before continuing. I will never again allow fear to speak louder than kindness. The sentence felt simple. Yet it carried enormous meaning. For years fear had quietly made many decisions. Fear delayed conversations. Fear postponed forgiveness. Fear silenced appreciation. Fear convinced them there would always be another opportunity. Now they understood that tomorrow is never guaranteed. Today is the gift we actually possess. Because your heart needs this right now, because love becomes meaningful when it is expressed rather than postponed. Later that morning they returned to the familiar park. The towering oak tree still stood proudly beside the peaceful lake. Its branches stretched confidently toward the bright blue sky. Gentle breezes danced through the leaves. Sunlight shimmered across the calm water. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children laughed while feeding ducks near the shore. Everything invited stillness. They found the same wooden bench overlooking the lake. Instead of asking life for more answers, they quietly thanked life for today's opportunities. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude changes the way we see ordinary moments. Nearby, an elderly grandfather patiently helped his grandson build a small kite. The boy became frustrated when one corner refused to stay in place. I'll never finish. The grandfather smiled warmly. You don't have to finish perfectly. You only have to keep trying. Those simple words echoed inside. Perhaps relationships worked exactly the same way. No relationship becomes meaningful because two people never struggle. Meaningful relationships grow because both people keep choosing patience. Because your heart needs this right now, because perseverance strengthens love more than perfection ever could. The morning slowly became afternoon. Walking beside the peaceful lake, they noticed an elderly woman painting the beautiful scenery. Curious, they admired the artwork. It looks peaceful, they said. She smiled. It wasn't peaceful at first. What do you mean? My first sketch was full of mistakes. But every correction helped reveal the picture I truly wanted. Those words quietly settled into their heart. Life often feels unfinished while we are living it. Mistakes do not always ruin the picture. Sometimes they become part of its beauty. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth often happens through correction rather than perfection. Later they wandered into the community garden. Rows of roses, lilies, daisies, and lavender stretched beneath the afternoon sunshine. An elderly gardener carefully trimmed healthy branches from a flowering bush. Curious, they asked. Why trim something that's already growing well? The gardener smiled kindly. So it can become even healthier. Those words lingered. Sometimes people must let go of fear. Sometimes pride must be trimmed away. Sometimes resentment must be removed. Sometimes silence must give way to honest conversations. Only then can healthier relationships continue growing. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy hearts continue growing by letting go of what no longer helps them flourish. The afternoon breeze carried soft guitar music across the park. Only a few visitors stopped to listen. Still, every note was played beautifully. Watching the musician reminded them that beautiful things rarely demand attention. Integrity grows quietly. Compassion grows quietly. Patience grows quietly. Hope grows quietly. Yet together they quietly transform lives. Because your heart needs this right now, because the greatest influences often arrive gently. Returning once more to the familiar bench, they opened the notebook. Today's page quickly filled. Today I discovered another truth. The urgent message I believed I needed wasn't about panic. It was about courage. The courage to appreciate people. The courage to apologize sincerely. The courage to forgive generously. The courage to listen before assuming. The courage to love without allowing fear to remain in control. Reading those words filled them with unexpected peace. Not because life had become easier, but because their heart had become stronger. Because your heart needs this right now, because strength is often measured by the kindness we choose during difficult moments. As afternoon slowly became evening, the golden sunlight reflected across the peaceful lake. Families packed picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned to their nests. Everything gradually became quiet. Standing beside the calm water, they reflected once again on the title of this story. Your soulmate is saying, I need to tell you what happened today. It's very urgent, please open this. They smiled softly. The urgency had never been about fear. It had never been about predicting tomorrow. It had never been about hidden mysteries. The true urgency was remembering that life moves forward every single day. Kind words should not always wait. Forgiveness should not always wait. Gratitude should not always wait. Encouragement should not always wait. Because your heart needs this right now, because today's loving words may become someone's lifelong source of hope. As evening settled across the neighborhood, they returned home beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The room felt calm. The notebook rested quietly on the table. Opening it one final time before bed, they carefully wrote, "Tomorrow I will continue choosing honesty. Tomorrow I will continue choosing compassion. Tomorrow I will continue listening with patience. Tomorrow I will continue forgiving with sincerity. Tomorrow I will continue becoming someone whose words and actions reflect kindness, humility, gratitude, and hope." Then they paused before writing one final reflection. "Today I learned that the most important messages are rarely dramatic. They are quiet reminders to appreciate the people we love, to speak with honesty, to forgive when healing is possible, and to live each day with compassion instead of fear. Those ordinary choices slowly become extraordinary, shaping relationships built on trust, respect, and genuine care." They gently closed the notebook. Outside, the stars continued shining. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would quietly appear. New lessons would patiently unfold. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared the words they once struggled to say. Because they had discovered that the greatest message is never one that predicts the future. It is the one that encourages us to live today with honesty, gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, and hope. The final morning arrived with a quiet stillness unlike any morning before. The first rays of sunlight gently slipped through the curtains, filling the room with warm shades of gold. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of fresh rain, blooming flowers, and the promise of another beautiful day. Birds welcomed the sunrise with cheerful songs. Outside, the neighborhood slowly awakened. The little bakery on the corner unlocked its doors before dawn, filling the streets with the comforting aroma of warm bread. Children laughed as they hurried toward school. Neighbors smiled while watering colorful gardens. Everything looked wonderfully ordinary. Yet inside one heart, something extraordinary had quietly happened. The fear that had once whispered, "Wait a little longer," had finally grown silent. In its place stood something stronger. Peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace often begins when honesty becomes stronger than fear. That morning they prepared breakfast slowly. There was no rushing. No pressure. Only gratitude. A warm cup of tea rested beside the window while sunlight stretched across the wooden floor. Instead of thinking about unfinished conversations or unanswered questions, they simply appreciated the beauty of the present moment. A butterfly landed on the windowsill before gently flying away. A pair of sparrows gathered twigs to build a nest. The breeze softly moved the curtains. Tiny moments. Simple blessings. For years they believed happiness would arrive after every uncertainty disappeared. Now they understood something different. Peace isn't found by controlling tomorrow. Peace is found by living today with honesty, kindness, and hope. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude transforms ordinary mornings into unforgettable memories. After breakfast they reached once more for the familiar notebook. Its worn cover reflected years of faithful use. Inside were dreams once thought impossible. Questions that had slowly found answers. Prayers whispered through difficult seasons. Moments of gratitude carefully written after ordinary days. Turning every page felt like meeting every version of themselves. The frightened version. The impatient version. The uncertain version. The hopeful version. And finally, the peaceful version. They smiled softly. The notebook had never predicted the future. Instead, it quietly recorded the transformation of one heart learning to choose truth instead of fear. Because your heart needs this right now, because the greatest journey often happens inside us. Only one blank page remained. They rested the pen gently against the paper. For several quiet moments they simply listened to the birds outside. Then they slowly began writing. Today I finally understand what the urgent message truly meant. It was never asking me to panic. It was inviting me to become more honest. It wasn't warning me about tomorrow. It was reminding me to appreciate today. It wasn't about hidden mysteries. It was about open hearts. Reading those words filled their eyes with quiet tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of gratitude. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude often appears when we recognize how much we have grown. Later that morning they returned one final time to the familiar park. The old oak tree still stretched confidently toward the bright blue sky. Its branches danced gently in the breeze. The peaceful lake reflected drifting white clouds. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children laughed while feeding ducks near the shoreline. Everything invited quiet reflection. Finding the familiar wooden bench, they sat down without speaking. For several peaceful minutes they simply watched the gentle ripples moving across the water. There was no desperate search for answers. No anxious waiting. Only quiet appreciation. Because your heart needs this right now, because contentment often begins when we stop chasing certainty and start embracing the present. Nearby, an elderly craftsman carefully restored an old wooden bench. A curious child watched him work. "Why don't you buy a new one?" the child asked. The craftsman smiled warmly. Because something that's been cared for deserves another chance. It may carry scratches. It may show signs of time. But it still has strength. Those simple words settled deeply into their heart. People are often like that bench. Relationships are often like that bench. Life leaves marks. Mistakes leave scars. Time creates challenges. Yet patience, honesty, compassion, forgiveness, and understanding can restore what once seemed impossible to repair. Because your heart needs this right now, because healing begins when people choose restoration instead of giving up. The afternoon quietly unfolded. Golden sunlight shimmered across the peaceful lake. A father patiently taught his daughter how to ride her bicycle. Each time she lost balance, she stood up smiling. Her father never criticized her. Instead, he gently said, "You learned something." She laughed and tried again. Watching them reminded the person that healthy relationships are not built through perfection. They are built through encouragement. Because your heart needs this right now, because people grow best where they feel safe to learn. Later they wandered into the flower garden. Rows of roses, lilies, daisies, lavender, and sunflowers bloomed beneath the afternoon sunshine. An elderly gardener carefully watered every flower. Curious, they asked, "Do flowers all bloom together?" The gardener smiled kindly. "No. Every flower has its own season. But every flower deserves patience." Those words quietly settled into their heart. People also grow differently. Some heal quickly. Others slowly. Some trust easily. Others need reassurance. Kindness respects every journey. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding grows wherever patience is practiced. As the afternoon slowly drifted toward evening, they returned once more to the familiar bench. Opening the notebook to its final page, they carefully wrote, "Today I release unnecessary fear. I release hesitation. I release pride. I release the belief that tomorrow is guaranteed. Instead, I choose honesty. I choose gratitude. I choose compassion. I choose forgiveness. I choose humility. I choose hope." Reading those simple words brought a peace unlike anything they had known before. They realized the greatest burden had never been uncertainty. It had been believing they needed perfect timing before choosing kindness. Because your heart needs this right now, because kindness is always the right choice, even when every answer hasn't arrived. As the golden sunset painted the sky with shades of orange, pink, and violet, families gathered their picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned to their nests. Everything gradually became still. Standing beside the peaceful lake, they reflected one final time on the title of this story. Your soulmate is saying, "I need to tell you what happened today. It's very urgent, please open this." A gentle smile crossed their face. The true urgency had never been about panic. It had never been about a supernatural message. It had never been about predicting the future. The real message was beautifully simple. Life is precious. Don't wait too long to tell people they matter. Don't postpone gratitude. Don't delay forgiveness. Don't let fear become louder than love. Because today's kind words may become someone's lifelong source of hope. Because your heart needs this right now, because ordinary acts of love often leave extraordinary memories. That evening they returned home beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The room felt peaceful. The notebook rested quietly on the table. Opening it one final time, they carefully wrote, "If this journey has taught me anything, it is this. Never wait for the perfect moment to speak with kindness. Never assume people already know they are appreciated. Tell them. Never allow fear to silence gratitude. Never underestimate the healing power of one honest conversation. Never believe forgiveness is weakness. It is often the beginning of freedom." They paused before writing one final reflection. Tomorrow remains unwritten, but I no longer fear it. Whether life brings joyful celebrations, difficult conversations, unexpected opportunities, or quiet ordinary mornings, I choose to meet each day with honesty, patience, gratitude, humility, compassion, and hope. Those values may not remove every challenge, but they will guide every decision and help me build relationships rooted in trust, respect, and genuine love. They gently closed the notebook. The journey had reached its final page. Outside, the stars continued shining. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would quietly unfold. And for the first time in many years, they no longer feared what tomorrow might bring. Because they had discovered the greatest truth of all. The most important message was never hidden inside mystery. It was the quiet reminder to live each day with honesty, gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, humility, and hope. Those simple choices become the strongest foundation for every meaningful relationship and every peaceful heart. The room became still. The stars filled the night sky. With a gentle smile, they turned off the light, ready to welcome tomorrow, not with fear, but with courage, wisdom, kindness, and love.